Hi, it's Jared from Strong Roots Farm. Today I'm going to be talking about the difference in what I think is the difference between paddock grazing versus strip grazing. I'm going to show you some examples here and we'll get through all that coming up after this. All right, first off, I kind of have to show you the dilemma, why I'm going to choose to do what I'm going to do, and then we'll talk about these differences and why. So we've got some hydrants way out here. I'm way out in the back 40 of the pasture. My house is probably a half mile that way. And so I'm way out at the very back. That's problem number one. Problem number two is these hydrants, when we bought this farm, somewhere underneath the ground here, these hydrants leak. One of the water lines is busted. So you can get some water out of it, but half of the water is shooting up out of the ground somewhere else. And it's a major problem. Got to fix it. It's on the plan to get done, but it's not done yet. So I don't have water back here. I do have water that doesn't leak about 300 feet up that way. So right now we're running hoses out to where we're at. And so let's go see what we're doing now with paddocking, and I'll kind of show you the size and the amount of head. Standing in a paddock, essentially a square of pasture that is lotted off, restricting cows in with a single strand electric wire. In each paddock, in the paddock that I'm in, I have their water bowl, and actually I have two of them. I have one there and one there. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. I have my mineral bin, which I pull with the gator. There is 18 slots in this one because of the size, and I made it out of scrap material. I really need one with 20. So then I also have this piece of a barrel that I cut off that has my salt in it. So got the mineral out here to them. We've got single strand electric fence. We come out every day on the gator. We take down one fence or let them through one fence, and they come into this square. Now the way I do it is, this is the fence, the paddock that's right behind me is where they were yesterday. Okay, so there's a fence to my left and a fence to my right that holds them in this paddock yesterday. To the left of that, over here, there was the fence where they were 2 days ago. And then over to my right is the fence where they're going to be tomorrow. Why do I leave those up? So I leave a day up behind them so that if something happens, and I've had lightning storms, we've had, bad weather come about, which you can see is coming tonight, and a cow gets scared, and sometimes, doesn't happen very often, one calf, one cow, one day every 45 days, 60 days gets out. But that second line back there prevents them from roaming my whole farm. Okay, it's all hard fenced. They can't get out, but it keeps them right close. So the next day I come back, bump them back in, and I find they don't tend to do that if I keep the safety measure up. As soon as I drop my guard, say, oh, they're fine, they've got it, one gets out. So, and then we also have the same thing moving forward. One, it lets me plan as I come out. They're not mooing and waiting on me to set up fence. They're not bawling at me, but it's already set up. But it also prevents, if they happen to get out on this side, they're in the paddock that they're going to be in next. So that's the way I'm running this. Okay. So paddock here, they were on last night. We opened the fence up. So essentially I have about 100 feet here from side to side in this lane. I have a cross fence, and this field is probably 300 feet across. So right now I'm getting somewhere between 100 to 150 by 100 square for 30 head. So what we do is we were here yesterday. I opened the gate up, letting them go to that other half of what I'm going to call a lane. They back graze one day here to the water. Tomorrow, they go over there to that square. We move the waters over. There's no back grazing on day one. Day two, they move up to the other end. They back graze to this end where the water is along this fence line. So that is paddock moving. Now to solve my issue, I don't have water this far back. This paddock that I'm standing in, the very next paddock, I'm out of water hoses. So either I can go buy more water hoses, I can go get the backhoe out, spend a couple evenings fixing the water line while I'm working on everything else, or I can come up with a different solution. And so here's what I've done to fix that problem. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to strip graze to fix that problem. The other thing we've got going on right now is we're hitting this heat wave. So it's Ohio. It's really weird. We're hitting 80 degrees, and 2 weeks ago it was 50 45 and 50 degrees. So it's crazy. But I've got some woods behind me. So what I'm going to do is allow these cows to go into the woods, which is probably only 2 acres. There's 2 acres of woods here. We will fence it off. You can see there's some grazing on the edge of the wood line all the way down through there. I'm about 50 feet or 25 feet over from my fence. So there's some good grazing there. There's grazing in the woods a little, but it's shade. Okay, so we're gonna run them down through here, all the way down this fence line, through this little strip and into this woods behind me. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna come out and strip graze, and I'll show you the difference. So we let them into the woods. They're gonna walk back to the water where my hoses that I currently have will reach and get water in the woods, day 1. Day 2, they come out to this little strip. So there's probably 300 feet long and 30 feet wide here. This long strip. This is the end of my property. That fence over there is the end of my property line. Across this, from this fence to my right, all the way across, there's probably 200 feet of pasture in this corner, okay? So every day, I'm gonna strip graze to the other side, letting them back graze into the woods where their water is. And so strip grazing, typically as you move across the field, across your entire field in strips, allowing them to back graze the entire time. And that's what's gonna happen here. They're gonna constantly be able to back graze to get to that water. This is not the best part of my farm. I'm sacrificing basically 2 acres here where they'll be allowed to back graze. I'll come in and cut it down with the bush hog when I'm done, and I won't be back here for another 90 days. In that time, I'll have the water fixed and we can paddock graze this how we plan. So this is gonna do 2 things. It's gonna allow my cows to have good grass, eat up this stuff, the very back of my property, get it down, have good shade inside woods, get to their water. And then we're gonna be working our way through the woods. I've got 5 paddocks set up in woods where they'll hit before we go back up front. By that time, I'll have my shade structure built, and we'll be starting back over where we started day 1. I believe that was March 10th up front. So today is May 15th, somewhere in there. So we've been since March 10th, so almost 2 months since we've been at the front of the farm, and now we're gonna start back over. And the grass is heavy. It's taller than this up there. This has never been grazed. This is day 1 of grazing. And you can see the fescue's tall. Got a lot of orchard grasses, clovers, all in here. But we're gonna start rotating back May 15th here for the 2nd grazing of the year on our farm. And as we rotate these cows through, the grass is about to boom. Okay, so hitting June 1st, the grass is going to shoot up. Every time we get a rain, you're going to see 4 to 6 inches of growth. I'm not going to be able to keep up with it. The plan is go buy more cows. So we're going to buy more, get us through until September, and then call some of them that we're not happy with on their growth rates and ship them off, gaining that profit in the weight that we put on them over 3 or 4 month period when the grass, I couldn't keep up with it. Well, I got soaked. So that's what you get for making videos while it's about to rain and you're still trying to do cattle work. So to kind of recap on the difference in what I believe is the difference in strip grazing versus paddock moves. Paddock moves, you move from one square to the next, never coming back, or coming back a minimal amount of times, a minimal amount of back grazing. Or strip grazing, you graze strips away from something and you come back to water or a shelter or woods for shade, whatever it would be. You're strip grazing down a field, and you can not back graze in strip grazing. You can go the entire width of your field and strip graze away if you can move what you have. But typically, that's the difference in what I think of strip grazing versus paddock moving, and in that scenario. When do I use strip grazing versus paddock moving? Okay, and why do you choose one or the other? So the biggest thing is back grazing. Back grazing allows cows to trample and take a 2nd or 3rd bite out of grass that they've already been on, which is bad news. You want to graze across quick, get them across of it, and then take the cattle pressure off the land to allow it to heal. If you're back grazing, you're stopping that growth or that healing of the land or delaying it due to the back grazing. So that's how I determine what I'm using. So I want to paddock move 95% of the time. I want to minimize the back grazing as much as I can, keeping cattle off ground, allowing land to heal quicker, faster, and better, and allow the manure to be dispersed. Now, that doesn't mean I can't move something else on it, whether it's a grazing pig, whether it's chickens for layers or meat birds, some other facet enterprise within your farm that is going to help build the soil. But the idea is get everything through, get it on, get it off, allow the land to heal. So I want to paddock graze as much as possible. So the only time I will strip graze is out of necessity. I have to strip graze back there. One, it's hot. I don't have the shade structure built. I got to get some cows in the shade, minimize their decrease in weight due to the heat. So I'm going to, hopefully they'll eat better when they're in shade, as well as the water issue, which you saw. So I'm going to strip graze out of necessity only for 4 days here in this little section of my farm at the very back 40. Or I will strip graze during the winter after I've done all my winter grazing, and now I'm on stockpile grass. That's the last, once they eat it, it's gone. It ain't coming back until May or March, somewhere in that window. So I will strip graze at times from that. Typically that's due to necessity again, because I'm strip grazing back to a frost-free water. So if I have a water that does not freeze at all and I don't have to go out to the pasture, I will strip graze away from that water, back grazing to that water, and then move them to the next water that you have available or whatever you have to prevent freezing of your water. That is the time that water freezes wherever you are until the land and the weather is so bad that you have to move them to some kind of structure, if ever. I mean, I've seen cows in -30 with just windbreaks. So I tend to mid-January get them in a barn for a month and a half, 2 months, which I think is pretty good. 60 days around a barn. There's still 4 acres around my barn that we will paddock or strip graze away from the barn and come back in. And the way I've got it set up is they can go into 1 acre of those 3 acres and not back graze on top of them, actually. So I'm still paddock moving, I guess, in that. But strip grazing, you do out of necessity. You're okay with the back grazing. You're not going to do a lot of damage during the winter. The ground is pretty hard. It's either froze or it's not very muddy. If you're muddying up through back grazing, it will cause damage. To stay away from that. I figure out a scenario where you don't have to back graze if they start to muddy it up. That happens here sometimes in our December grazing, where it's frozen, we get snow, we go out and graze, then it warms back up to 40 and all that snow is now mud, and we don't want them to back graze and tear that land up. So it kind of depends on your scenario and what works for you and how it goes. Now, the other scenario that I've seen with strip grazing, if I have a piece of property where, let's say this directly behind me, there's a fence and it has a water line on it, and I strip graze perpendicular to that fence. Okay, so I've seen people call this strip grazing because the water is all the way, let's say at the south side, you let them go all the way to the north side of your property and you're strip grazing east to west. So if you're strip grazing across there, I've seen people call that strip grazing. I would still call that paddock moving, because they're not back grazing on what they grazed yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, depending on how you move, or if you move every 3 days, whatever your move structure is. So you're moving across an entire farm in a strip. If your water is on one end of your farm, you're really cutting corner, fighting words here at this point. So people will call that strip grazing. I still call that paddock moving. So strip grazing versus paddock moving to me is not allowing them to back graze. So what's right for you? If I can give you a recommendation, and I can't, it has to be your decision based on your piece of land and your scenario. Now, if I came out and I did a consult and I saw your farm and recommended you do what to do, there could be some scenarios there on what you should choose when. My recommendation is always going to be, don't back graze. If you can prevent back grazing, don't ever back graze, or only back graze 1 day, minimal back grazing. Allow the healing of the land quicker and faster. That's the whole video, over and over. I keep saying that. So that is what I'm going to recommend to you and how you set that up. If you're a new farm and you're setting it up, or perhaps you're an old farm and you're trying to redo some things and you want to do it differently this time, think about those moves. Where should water be? And I saw a video from Greg Judy, and this is really the greatest advice. If you had a square of a farm or a long rectangle, which would be a perfect scenario, and that typically never happens, you line out your outer perimeter of your fence. You have one division fence in the center of that property. So you got perimeter fence on the outside. I would use woven wire. High tensile is good too if you're only gonna run cattle. But then the center fence can be longer spacing on your fence posts. It can be high tensile, and that's where your hot feed is. And then you have a hot bumper wire on your perimeter. And you basically take these animals in circles. So you go down one side because you got your middle divider wire where your water is. You go down one side of your farm, you go to the top, you come back towards the house, and your water's in the center. You're always feeding off of that center line. You have your hot power and your water all based off of that center line. Well, there you have it. I hope this video helps you. Overall, we've seen huge production growth due to rotational grazing. So that's a big thing. It's hit big ag now. This is how we do our paddock moves. We've showed multiple videos on this, and you just have to find how it's going to work for you best. Our production growth, we have more live weight animal pressure weight on a piece of land, on an acre here in our area than the average farmer who is open grazing in our area. So some of the things are all exactly the same. We have the same geo area, same soil types. We're buying from the same seed companies. We have our same local TSC that we get our fencing from or whatever we're doing. And most of our cattle even have some of the same lines. So how are we getting a higher production rate than the guy who is just open grazing? It's due to this rotational grazing paddock moving the way we're doing it. So it's all due to that. We can have more cattle, we have more healing of the land, we have a higher weight of grass, and our land is healthier. So I'm gonna put less fertilizer on, if any, on our property. So our land is better, and it's all due to this fact. So hope that helps you. Behind you can see the shade structure that we've been working on. I've been taking videos. It's gonna be a great video. You need to watch for this video coming out here soon. It's taken us a long time on this thing. So it's working in between every other project. We've been working on this. This is gonna be a game changer. It is really gonna help us. Everything you saw us move out in the paddocks is gonna be on one cart. It's one thing to move, really shortening our times on our paddock moves daily. And so really gonna be effective. I can't wait for that video to come out, and that's an exciting one. It's been a big project for us, and it's taken me a long time. So a lot of welding, a lot of cutting, a lot of grinding, free metal. Sometimes it's not even worth it, as much rework you have to do on it, but this is gonna be a game changer. So look forward to that video. Keep watching, like and subscribe, all those things. And if we can help you, please comment. I'm interested in what you wanna see us do, what you wanna see the video, what you wanna see, how we can help you, what problems you're having on your farm. Instead of having a consult from somebody else that knows what they're doing, ask me what you should do. And I'll go through and show you what we do on some different things. I've had some guys wanting to come over, talk about fencing, how they should build their fence. And so I think I'm gonna get into some of those videos coming up soon as well. Appreciate you watching.